Can a rabbit remind us to give generously in order to help ease the suffering of another? And can the combined pairing of a lion and a woodpecker help us to understand when we can be compassionate, but also not to be foolish about it? Hi, it's Margaret Meloni, and welcome to the Death Dhamma podcast. I'm a Buddhist practitioner out here in the world, having experienced the loss of my loved ones and knowing how much my Buddhist practice helped me on my grief journey. And now, together, we have this safe space to discuss death, dying, grief, and the Buddhist teachings that help us really understand attachment, impermanence, being compassionate, being death ready, what it means to live a life so that we can have a peaceful death. Yep, it's a big topic, and we're going to take it on together. Let's go. In the Jataka tales, we find the stories of the Buddha's past lives. The Buddha before he was a Buddha, in his many rebirths on his journey. There are approximately 547 Jataka tales, and they are short mostly, and they read like Aesop's fables, if you come from the West, as an example. And they're stories illustrating the Buddhist ideal, how to live a good life. And throughout these stories, the Buddha takes on many roles, often appearing as animals, maybe as a king or another person. And you recognize in the stories some of his companions. As these stories are teaching the Buddhist ideal, of course, we're going to come across compassion and giving, which we know ties to alleviating the suffering of others. And so today, we're going to take a look at a story of a rabbit who was willing to give all, and the story of a lion and a woodpecker, where the lion teaches the woodpecker, it's great to give, but don't be a fool. The Jatakas are typically made up of three parts. First would be the story of the present, which is when the Buddha was telling the Jataka or relaying the Jataka tale to a group of monks, most likely, who were listening. Then there's the second part, which is the past life story, where he goes back and tells the story of back in the day and what happened between certain characters. And then the third part is the identification of the main characters. And that's where you learn, oh, the Buddha was the monkey, or this person was the rabbit. And that's how they're situated. Now, they're developed probably during the 4th century before Common Era. And although they are now included in the Pali Canon, they are not really unique to Buddhism. These tales serve as valuable insight into the history of the society and the political, societal, and religious structures of that time. They were stories that were part of the cultural identity, which followers of the Buddha would have been familiar with. And so they have been folded into the teachings in a way that makes them useful for teaching Buddhist concepts. And on that note, let's hear about that generous rabbit. This comes from the Sasa Jataka. So in this story, we know that the Buddha, who at the time was a bodhisattva, because this was before he became a Buddha, he is a rabbit. Now, a Brahmin, who is a religious man, comes and asks the rabbit for food. Because even in today, remember, in some countries such as Thailand, Buddhist monks go out with bowls and the local community gives them food. There's a purposefully independent relationship between the monks and the lay people. Today, monks do not ask rabbits or any other animals other than humans for food. But in this Jataka tale, the Brahmin asked 4 animals for alms: an otter, a monkey, a jackal, and a rabbit. Each animal responded by sharing the spoils from their own hunt or foraging. The otter had fish, the monkey contributed some fruit, and the jackal provided some lizard meat and milk curds. Now the rabbit only ate grass and realized that grass was unsuitable for a human, so when it was his turn, he offered himself up as a meal. This passage describes what happens next. Rising from his bed of kuka grass and coming to the place, he thrice shook himself, that if there were any insects within his coat, they might escape death. This is the rabbit we're talking about. Then offering his whole body as a free gift, he sprang up and like a royal swan alighting on a cluster of lotuses, in an ecstasy of joy, he fell on the heap of live coals. But the flame failed even to heat the pores of the hair on the body of the rabbit, also known as the Buddha, or at that time the Bodhisattva. It was as if he had entered a region of frost. Then he addressed the Brahmin in these words, "Brahmin, the fire you have kindled is icy cold. It fails to beat even the pores of the hair on my body. What is the meaning of this?" "Wise sir," he replied, "I am no Brahmin. I am Saka, and I have come to put your virtue to the test." Now, in the Buddhist cosmology, Saka is one of the primary devas, like a king of the devas or gods. The Bodhisattva said, "If not only thou, but all the inhabitants of the world were to try me in this matter of almsgiving, they would not find me in any way unwillingness to give." In other words, the rabbit was willing to give whatever, whenever. Not whatever, whenever. The rabbit was willing to give up his body because he only ate grass and he felt like all he had to give was his own meat, and he was willing to do it. So with this, the Bodhisattva left out a cry saying, "O wise hare, be thy virtue known throughout a whole eon." And squeezing the mountain, with the essence thus extracted, he drew the sign of a hare on the orb of the moon. And after depositing the hare on a bed of young kuka grass in the same wooded part of the jungle, he returned to his own place in the heavens. Saka was the king of the gods. In this story, Buddha identified the animals as some of his most devoted followers and senior monks. The otter was Ananda, while the jackal was Moggallana, and the monkey Sariputta. In this Jataka, we see the big theme of the rabbit willingly giving his life to feed a holy man, and we understand that this is really a test. We also learn that this is the role of non-monks, in this story, the animals, right, to support the efforts of monks. The rabbit did not have to die, he just had to show how far he was willing to go to support the Brahmin. A holy man deserves your maximum support, or a holy woman. If you compare the gifts that each animal was preparing to give, you see that while the otter, jackal, and monkey were all generous, it was the rabbit, the past life of the Buddha, who was willing to give everything. Together, the otter, jackal, monkey, and rabbit show us the importance of our spiritual community, and specifically, they teach us to provide support to our Buddhist teachers. We also see that one who is further along the path has no qualms about giving everything. This tale is about what a willingness to give does for you, not about what others actually gain from your gift. As we grapple with the truth of suffering, we see that attachment comes from greed. We've talked about this in the past. It's not wrong to enjoy life and to enjoy the people around you. Our suffering comes from not being satisfied, from wanting the good times to never end. The cure for greed is generosity. In what way can you direct generosity towards others? And this brings us to our second story. Once there was a woodpecker who saw a lion with a bone wedged in his throat. The lion couldn't eat and was going to starve to death. Now, if you're a woodpecker, flying close to a lion is a really bad idea. Yet this woodpecker saw the lion suffering and knew that he could help him. But was he going to lose his life in the process of helping the lion? This is the dilemma presented to us in the Javasakuna Jataka. The woodpecker quickly advised the lion that he could save his life, but in turn the lion must not take the life of the woodpecker. Feeling cautiously optimistic, the woodpecker took a stick and used it to wedge the lion's jaws open. He then hopped into the lion's mouth, pulled the bone out of his throat, kicked away the stick, and quickly flew to safety. The lion made a full recovery. At a later time, the woodpecker came across that same lion. He reminded the lion that he'd saved his life and asked the lion for a favor. The lion said to the woodpecker, "To trust thy head to a lion's jaw, a creature red in tooth and claw, to dare such a deed and be living still, is token enough of my goodwill." The woodpecker realized that if he was within reach, this time the lion would eat him. So he flew away. In this story, the Buddha was the woodpecker, and Devadatta was the lion. And Devadatta is the cousin of the Buddha who was always out to get him. From this story, we learn that the Buddha extended compassion to those who would do him harm. We learn not to assume that helping others will change their true nature. This is an important point for most of us lay people. This lesson also offers up a reminder Do not expect wild animals to be anything other than what they are. And again, we can extend that to some of the people around us. We can hope for their growth along the path, but we should not expect people to be anything other than what they are. We should still do the best we can to help and to offer compassion and to make their lives easier. But don't expect a lion to be anything other than a lion. These are just 2 stories from the Jatakas. As I've told you, there's 547. Not all 547 stories are about compassion or easing suffering. There are other Buddhist ideals that are taught. But in keeping with our theme for the season of helping to ease the suffering of others, I hope that these tales of the past life of the Buddha are in some way inspirational for all of us. It's a good reminder for me as I read them as to what and how we can help and how we can give and when we give and how much we give, and an awareness of what may or may not happen when we do decide to give. I've got books for you, starting with Carpooling with Death, How Living with Death Will Make You Stronger, Wiser, and Fearless, the book that got me going and helped me to discuss going through the death of my loved ones, followed by Sitting with Death, Buddhist insights to help you face your fears and live a peaceful life, based on Season 1 of the Death Dhamma podcast. And just recently, Enlightenment Unleashed, how your pet can lead you to spiritual transformation, because during our lifetime, we may see the rising and ceasing of many pets, and we love them like they are our family. Find these on Amazon.com or come see me at MargaretMeloni.com. You've been listening to the Death Dhamma podcast with your host, Margaret Meloni. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on MargaretMeloni.com, MargaretMeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.